One of the few US channels I actually trust is Belle of the Ranch. She's thoughtful, balanced, and her content dives into what's really going on down there. About a month ago, she posted a video on the Canadian tourist boycott. And to be fair, she got a lot right. Belle, if you're watching, great video, but I do have a few updates and corrections to offer. And to her fans, this isn't an attack. It's just feedback from a Canadian who's living through this. So please, no dogpiling, like what happened with Tyler's crowd. Before we dive in, the photo backdrop today is one I took in Whistler back in May. Hard to believe the 2010 Olympics were 15 years ago. All right, let's get started.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Belle again. So today, we're going to talk about Canadian tourists, Trump, declines, and billions. While Trump backed off on China for 90 days, which was certainly the most pressing scenario capable of derailing the U.S. economy, there's another issue that is still getting worse. When Trump started his global trade war that so far has not paid off, he hit Canada pretty hard. Not just with trade barriers, but also with pretty pointed rhetoric. He referred to the Prime Minister as governor and referred to their country as the 51st state. He talked about adjusting borders and talked about taking over the country. While that rhetoric has softened, it isn't gone.
You mentioned two things that have escalated since Donald came back into the spotlight: tariffs and the 51st state rhetoric. Speaking for myself, and maybe for some of my viewers too, the tariffs? That wasn't the breaking point. Donald slapped tariffs on Canada during his first term, and while it was frustrating, I still visited the US back then. Things felt tense, but manageable. It didn't stop me from crossing the border. But the second part, the 51st state rhetoric, that's where everything changed. The annexation talk hit a nerve with a lot of Canadians, and what many Americans, media outlets, and even YouTubers don't seem to understand is just how deep that wound goes. We've stood by the US for generations through wars, hurricanes, wildfires, and 9/11, and the Canadian caper. So when your president suggests turning us into a state, when he calls our prime minister a governor, that crosses a line. That combination, annexation and disrespect, is unforgivable. Many Canadians will never forget this, and the US tourism boycott is permanent for many. So of the two things you brought up, Canadians are far more upset about the 51st state rhetoric. And I do want to thank you for acknowledging it in your video.
But what is gone are Canadian tourists, in large numbers. That's unsurprising, since Trudeau told Canadians to choose Canada for their travel, and said, quote, "It might mean changing your summer vacation plans to stay here in Canada and explore the many national and provincial parks, historical sites, and tourist destinations our great country has to offer."
I know you mentioned at the end of your video that this wasn't official government policy, and you're right about that. But Trudeau's speech? That wasn't the reason Canadian tourism to the US took a nosedive. Canadians made that decision on their own. People are canceling trips, big ones, shifting their plans to stay within Canada or to visit countries that actually respect us. And I'm not just guessing. My viewers have been sending in their stories, and the message is crystal clear. They're pissed. Some are canceling $30,000, $40,000, even $50,000 trips to the US. One person even said they ate the cost of a non-refundable deposit and said, "Fuck it, I'm not going." This isn't a trend sparked by a government talking point. This is personal. It's not just US vacations that are being canceled. A lot of Canadian snowbirds, people who used to spend anywhere from 1 month to half the year in your country, they're done too. They're selling their vacation homes, packing up, and leaving for good. That's long-term income gone. And with every snowbird who leaves, thousands of dollars walk out of your economy for good.
When that happened back in February, the U.S. Travel Association provided some projections. Quote, "Canada is the top source of international visitors to the United States, with 20.4 million visits in 2024, generating $20.5 billion in spending and supporting 140,000 American jobs. A 10% reduction in Canadian travel could mean 2 million fewer visits, $2.1 billion in lost spending, and 14,000 job losses. A 10% reduction at the time seemed catastrophic and unthinkable. Now, with a couple of months' hindsight, it seems more like wishful thinking. A 10% reduction could lead to 2 million fewer visits for the year. The numbers, looking at their residents returning from the U.S. when compared to the previous year, show about 700,000 fewer return trips, in April alone, by car. If you add in the reduction in return air travel, which is another reduction of about 580,000 trips when compared to the previous year, we're looking at the loss of almost 1.3 million trips in April alone. Going by the Travel Association numbers, it's relatively safe to say that Trump's trade war with Canada cost the U.S. $1 billion in tourism revenue just in April. And the conditions are set now to lose thousands of jobs.
There's another revenue stream the U.S. is losing, and it's not getting much coverage down there. That's the boycott on U.S. products. It might not be all over your media, but it's happening. Canadians are done. We're avoiding U.S. products, subscriptions, and services altogether. Provincial governments have pulled U.S. liquor from store shelves. A 93% loss to your liquor industry. Some shelves are sitting empty. Others are being restocked with Canadian or allied brands. Well, every province except 2. Yeah, we're looking at you, Danielle and Scott. I didn't say Alberta and Saskatchewan. You two personally made that call. Residences of these 2 provinces are deciding to ignore the U.S. liquor on the shelves. But it's not just about alcohol. U.S. produce, dairy, grocery store items are being left to rot. People are skipping entire sections. There are even subreddits helping Canadians find alternatives to U.S. goods. Netflix, Amazon, other services. They're being cancelled. So if you think the impact is limited to tourism, think again. Your manufacturing sector is taking a hit too.
It wasn't just April. April's car trips were down 35% when compared to the previous year. March was down 32%. February was down 23%. Based on the Travel Association's numbers and this trend, it seems like tens of thousands of jobs are in jeopardy and billions of dollars will be lost because of Trump's social media posts about Canada being the 51st state and his trade war. What's really important to remember is that this isn't the result of a policy decision by the Canadian government. This is the result of a policy decision by the Canadian people. They decided to not spend money with the U.S. That shift in attitude isn't necessarily going to end when Trump ends his trade war against Canada. Some of these effects will likely last years. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
I hate to break it to you, Belle, but this isn't going to be just a few years. For many of us in Canada, it's going to be decades, maybe even permanent. Here's what needs to be understood from the Canadian side. Yes, Donald created this mess, but he didn't do it alone. 77 million people voted for him. That's the part that really sticks. Eventually, Donald will be gone. Maybe a Democrat takes the White House again, and the U.S. will think it's all fixed and we go back to normal, right? It's not. Those 77 million Trump voters? They're not going anywhere. And neither is the 51st state rhetoric, the annexation talk, the constant disrespect. Telling Canadians to go home? That doesn't stop in 2029. That shit is baked in. And that's why a lot of us are done with the US, for good. But here's what's changed. Canadians are realizing we're not isolated. We've got the support of Europe, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Latin America, and the penguins on that island. The world actually respects us. We're not alone in this. If you ask me, 2025 is a turning point. The world has put up with US arrogance for decades. But now, more and more nations are saying, enough is enough. And Belle, thank you. It's rare to hear a US creator even mention the 51st state rhetoric. So if you're watching this, I hope this gives a little more context on why Canadians are so angry and why this runs deeper than most people think. If you ever want more insight from the Canadian side, I'm always reachable. And please, keep making the thoughtful content that you do. To my viewers, if this video helped you understand what's going on, hit like, subscribe, and share it to keep the message going. And if you're still here, check out the other videos showing up on screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.